This is my dog Zeke. Zeke was born in September of 2010. When we got Zeke home 8 weeks later, I immediately started laying down a foundation of basic commands. You know, the usual sit, stay, come, down, etc. Gradually, I'd also play games of fetch with him. I'd use the word fetch consistently. I'd cut a tennis ball open, I'd put treats in them, and that encouraged Zeke to retrieve the ball. And then when he handed it back to me, I would give him the treat. That encouraged him to hand me whatever he retrieved. After a few weeks, I started incorporating an antler into the fetch game. I'd throw the antler, I'd say fetch, just as before with the tennis ball. Instead, I'm using an antler now. And after a few days of that, I changed it up to fetch a bone. Again, a couple days of throwing the antler, saying fetch a bone, him bringing back to me treating him just as I did with the tennis ball.
Zeke.
Now, yellow labs, like Zeke here, he naturally curious, naturally want to retrieve. They naturally want to please you. It was actually fairly easy. I don't have any formal training in training a shed antler dog, and it was incredibly easy to train Zeke because he just wanted to keep pleasing me. And as long as I kept continuing to cue him in certain ways, he seemed to pick up on it pretty quick. Now eventually the fetching game has to turn into a hiding game. And what you're doing is you're going to be hiding antlers instead of throwing it out at him and having him retrieve it. And you want to use the same command. So I would simply started with very easy hides out in the middle of the yard. I'd put 2-3 antlers out there. I'd take him for a walk. I'd bring him out the back door. I'd bring him around the front. He'd see an antler laying there. I'd say, fetch a bone, Zeke, fetch a bone. He'd naturally want to go toward that antler and pick it up. He then started to piece together 2 plus 2. Hey, if I bring this back to Craig, he's going to treat me possibly. And that's what he started doing quite naturally. I mean, it was an easy progression. He picked up on the fetch a bone command, fetch a bone, fetch a bone. Sure enough, he kept bringing it back. I kept treating him.
But repetition, that's what it's all about. He's still a youngster. Zeke, try to get him in between. Fetch, buddy, fetch. Walked right by it. Fetch, buddy. Ooh, he picked up on it. There we go. Good boy, Zeke.
Over a few days, I slowly started to increase the distance from the antlers, and I kept repeating fetch a bone. I kept hiding him in a little bit more clever spots. I kept hiding him behind bushes. I kept walking him near the area, but not quite, and I kept saying fetch a bone. And that's the part that took the longest, because he kept expecting the antlers to be out in the open, but when they weren't, he often wondered what to do. And sometimes he'd run right past them, and then all of a sudden he'd catch a little whiff of them. And this is where incorporating the smell into it becomes very important. At a certain point during the game, you don't want your smell on the antlers, so you're going to have to take away your smell. So I had some antlers laying out on a fence, and I just let them weather for a real long time, and I started using only rubber gloves to handle those. And I started throwing those out further and further away from my boot prints and hiding them in some tall grass. I happen to have a very convenient field near my house with real tall grass, and the farmer, and there's no cows out there, and the farmer doesn't hang out there, so it was easy just to hang them out there for a few days. And then I'd bring Zeke out there after a couple days, and again we'd play the game, fetch a bone, and I'd walk him into the wind, and he started to pick up very quickly at that point that fetching an antler, when I say fetch a bone, was very important to me, and he knew a treat awaited him when he found an antler. So when I said fetch a bone, I mean, Zeke went after it, man. He'd be zipping all over looking for antlers. It was pretty amusing to watch.
Fetch, buddy. Come on, Zeke. Zeke, fetch. Fetch. Zeke, fetch. Come here. Well, he got the antler. He wants to take off with it. It's fine.
As long as he finds them, right? And then came the time to where I actually started shed antler hunting with him. By the time March rolled around, I had already shed hunted alone a couple times, but by the time mid-March came around, I thought Zeke was pretty ready to actually go out and look for an antler himself.
This has always been a really good looking spot in here. Saw this lone cedar tree here. Let's walk on over to the cedar tree. And we'll, nope, nothing down here. And then this hollow off to my left leads up into a cornfield. Oh, I see one laying right down there.
And one of the greatest tools is if you actually find an antler. The smell of the deer is actually on it. It's a perfectly fresh antler. I strongly encourage bringing a rubber glove out there with you, and so you can actually use it to train a little bit. And in this particular instant, I was walking along the end of a cornfield, and I found a fairly decent 5-point antler. So then I got up into the cornfield, and I'm trying to find the match, and I thought, let's incorporate this into some of Zeke's training.
Okay, I threw the antler I already found down there. We're gonna walk down here about another 100 yards. I'm gonna move on over, and we're gonna see if old Zeke here can pick up on it.
I knew that we were in for a long walk. We were walking up and down these rows of corn, and I just thought, why don't I distract him? So I picked up a stick and I kind of walked along with a little bit. I threw the stick way far away. He went after it. I threw the antler the other direction. At that point, he brought the stick back to me. I got him distracted, and we just kept walking about 150 yards down the cornfield. I figured we'd loop back around. We'd be walking into the wind, playing the same game that we've always played, and I'm just like, you know, as always, I've been saying it all day anyways. I just keep saying, fetch a bone, Zeke, fetch a bone. We are walking now for, 125 yards, and I'm wondering where the antler is at this point, and we'll just let the scene unfold here. It's pretty interesting. I never thought he'd find this antler. He was about 4 or 5 rows over from it. I didn't even see it, and I'm just about to walk past it, and you'll see what happens here. Zeke does a great job.
So one of the questions is, can Zeke find it? Come on, Zeke, let's fetch a bone. The second is, can I find it again? This will be interesting because I do not know exactly where I threw it. So it'll be like finding it all over again. Come on, Zeke, fetch your bone, bud. Come on, Zeke. Come on, Zeke, fetch your bone. Fetch your bone, buddy. Come on. Can't be too much. Ooh, look at that. He picked right up on it. Holy cow. Good boy.
And I'm actually extremely glad I brought Zeke out because I learned a lot just walking around with him. The little clues, I see how he reacts, his body language is something that cannot be learned at home. You two really have to learn off of each other, and that's one of the important things of shed antler hunting. You could walk all day, and if your dog is trying to point something out to you and you can't understand the little subtle, the way his nose moves and the way he kind of flicks his body and the way he kind of migrates to a certain area, if you're not picking up on the fact that he might be smelling something, you might be missing out on either a dead buck or a shed antler. So it's real important you get that practice, both of you, out in the field together.
He stops. He stops. Does he smell it? Fetch your bone, buddy. Oh, he almost zeroed in on it. Here, let me get him downwind. There we go, there we go. See how he zoned it right in on it? Took him a little while, but I'm starting to be able to read him a little bit better. Good boy. I'm starting to be able to read him a little bit better. In that he starts paying attention to little things. So this is what I deal with here. Straight up and down these little ridges. These are called spoil ridges.
Okay, in this particular scene, we were coming to the end of a point in a square mile area of what we call in eastern Ohio spoil ridges. Spoil ridges is just an old method of coal mining, strip mining that they used to do, where they just used to scrape off the coal and just used to dump the slag behind in these long piles of dirt. And it's pretty much reverted back to these long runs. It's great for deer. To walk around in them is just torture, but pretty cool area. The deer tend to bed on the end of these spoil ridges, And so I tend to turn on the camera when I'm coming to an area that just looks pretty good. And what happened here is I turned the camera on, and let's watch Zeke here. I kept saying fetch a bone, and we're coming right to the end of the point, and we'll see him scoop one up here at the very end of the point. This is training at its best. It was his first and only actual find all year. So I just wanted to highlight this because I think it's a really cool scene.
Come on, Zeke, fetch. Fetch your bone, buddy. Fetch your bone. Good boy, Zeke. Right. Good boy. Zeke here found a spike. Look at this. His first antler, and he won't even let it go. He has run across all kinds of other bone out here. Doesn't pay attention to it, and he finds this spike here, and he's going nuts. So,
by 4 months, he had found his first antler. 4 months after I started training him, and he was about 6 months old at that point. And he was getting pretty big at that point. He could carry his own. He was running around the field on his own. He loved being outside with me. That was the main thing. And this coming up year, a little refresher course before we head out, and I'm going to start that again after the holidays here. So starting in January, we're going to hit, do the antler thing all over again. It's going to click right back with them, and then we're going to head out. Hopefully, we can get some bigger finds this year out of Zeke. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe. Let me know how you like the video. And from Team Bonehead Pro, this is Craig. We'll see you on the next video. Thanks.